Okay, I think we're live. Hello and welcome to Freeplay 2018's online sessions. Freeplay is Australia's largest and longest running independent games festival. The festival is currently running all week in Melbourne, Australia. Tickets to the weekend conference are still available and you can find them at freeplay.net.au. If you'd like to join the conversation, our hashtag is #freeplay18. So welcome to this panel. Today, we're talking about success and failure and self-sabotage. First, before we actually go into it, we're going to just introduce ourselves, and I think we're just going to go from left to right. So, Bree, do you want to start?
Sure. Hello, I'm Bree. I am a game maker who explores the intersecting worlds of games and art. I'll pass it on.
Yeah. Emma?
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm a community manager for electronic arts. I'm actually an Australian, but I'm based in Seattle. I'm a geneticist turned community manager, which is a bit of a career difference. So, yeah.
Jason?
Hi, my name is Jason Imms. I'm a freelance technology and games journalist. I'm also the managing director of the Machine QA and the host of the Game Hugs podcast. And I have sabotaged myself many times, so I'm very keen to talk about this.
Sybil?
Hi, I'm Sybil. I'm a narrative designer, mostly working as a freelancer for video games, but also TV and advertising.
Hi. And TJ.
Hi, everyone. I'm TJ Hughes. I run a solo game dev company called Terrifying Jellyfish, where I make colorful and very aesthetics-driven games. I'm working on a weird experimental food art game. So I experiment on a lot of games that don't have goals and objectives, and just experimental, playful things like that.
Cool. And I'm Robin. I'm a game designer. I used to be in France, and then I spent some time in Australia, and I'm in Canada, and I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I'm probably going to do something here, hopefully. And so hi, everyone, and also hi to Boris Gay, I think, who's watching us, so special hi. Right, so what are we going to talk about? The title of the session is Success, the only race you'll self-sabotage to win. There are two things that I wanted to clarify first. What do we mean by success and what do we mean by self-sabotage? Success is like, there's probably lots of definitions, but the one that we were interested in for this panel is just like achievements and professional achievements, like how things that you do that advance your career, and also like anything that comes with fame or recognition, that sort of thing. And what we mean by self-sabotage is all the things, all the behavior that are detrimental to your health and that you do consciously or not, knowingly or not, in order to achieve this sort of success. And often that's actually counterproductive, and it's something that we should learn to identify and avoid. So one of the most obvious ways that this can manifest is in the workplace, when you're employed or when you're working by yourself as a freelancer, for instance. There are different potentially unhealthy work conditions, work environments, such as the infamous crunch. And yeah, I think we all had things to say about that. I don't know if Emma, you wanted to share about this topic.
Yeah, work-life balance is something that I feel very strongly about. In particular, to use my role, I've worked across time zones for quite a while, for most of my career. Being based out of Melbourne, a lot of the action in terms of organization as well as, you know, just trying to get everything together has been with Europe and the US. So it's much more readily accessible for the US and Europe to do conference calls with each other. However, it may end up being 2 o'clock in the morning Australian time. Now, I kind of had a reputation of showing up at stupid o'clock to a lot of these meetings, much to the detriment of my sleep. But I felt strongly about the project. I felt strongly about my own performance. So I was putting myself and my health in some regards to detriment to show up to these calls, because I knew that I had to show up. It was important. And even though I did trust my teammates to fill me in, there were some nuances that, you know, could potentially be lost in that. But it's an interesting balance between being dedicated to your work, to your craft, to your discipline, as well as looking after yourself, because the fact of the matter is, if you don't look after yourself physically, mentally, or anything else, then you are undermining yourself in every way, because no one's going to look after you. You have to look after yourself. Yeah. But these are the things that we have to do to be successful in both our projects, but also for our career as well. And that's just a small example of not getting enough sleep.
Yeah, and like that sort of that dedication can't make up for your health, basically, right?
Yeah, it makes you look good, but is it really doing you any benefits?
Yeah. And I mean, anyone can intervene if you have things to add, but I think it's also, in the end, when you make those sort of decisions, you probably produce lesser results in the long term.
Yeah, I think so.
Sorry.
After you, Sybil.
Oh, thank you. I think it's also a matter of experience. When I see younger people in the industry, they have smaller portfolios, they have smaller arguments to put themselves forwards and to look hireable. And to put your health in danger can be seen by themselves as a victory of sorts, an argument they can give their employer to say, like, I don't have the skills you'd require from me, but I can do that little bit more than your regular employees want to do. And there is a tendency that is very, very present among younger developers to sacrifice their health because they think it will make them look good. And there is a tendency to take more care of yourself when you grow older and when you gain experience in the industry.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say the same's true whether you work for another organization, as Emma mentioned, or if you work for yourself. Whether you feel like you have a good handle on work-life balance or not, that temptation's always there. You like for me, I have kids, and so I always knock off work at the right time. I always knock off work around 5 o'clock, and I do the kid thing, and I put them to bed and have dinner with them and everything. But then they're in bed. I could just go and get another couple of hours working. Like, I could just squeeze in just a little bit more, and I'd have less to do tomorrow, and that would be good. It really does all add up, and you need to take that time for yourself. Even if you feel like you've got the energy, it's really important to make sure you have those rest periods. Daily, ideally, but I mean, at least a few times a week if you can make it work.
Does anyone have specific tips with regards to kind of having that sort of discipline, which is really important?
I think one of the biggest skills you can have as a professional, no matter your discipline, is learning to say no. Like, no is not necessarily a dirty word. It's not like, no, I'm refusing to pick up this work because I'm too tired. It's saying, no, I want to put myself first so I can do better quality work and deliver on my timelines. I went through this as an indie and as a freelancer myself before moving to EA. And you have to learn to say no, but say no balanced out with everything else as well. So it's a powerful word that I think should be in everyone's arsenal.
I very much agree with that. That's something I'm learning to deal with now, actually. Now that I'm completely working for myself and just creating my own game. Yeah, I've just found that saying no is quite difficult for me, and I hadn't realized how hard it was until I realized, wow, like a lot of my time is getting sucked up from just like doing favors or just like promising to do things when I know I'm over capacity. And so, yeah, I've just been kind of learning that it's okay to say no, and like there's always a nice way to say it, I think.
Yeah.
I was going to also say, sorry, being sure to take breaks, whether it's like a full vacation and just not checking online, not checking email. It can be really hard, but hopefully you get in a position where you're not, where whoever's ahead of you, you can have a clear dialogue that I will actually not be checking emails. I'm not going to be available. And they don't expect, you're not going to get a text at like 1 or something in the morning to wake up or have any other commitments. You can just break away. Even if it's just a weekend, it doesn't have to be a full trip. I found that really useful. Yeah.
What happens when you're in a work environment where everyone has that mindset of the thing that Sybil mentioned, where you have to kind of prove to yourself or your employer that you have this tiny bit more than anyone else, and that ends up with everyone just staying till 9 or 10 at work, and then if you leave and you're the only one leaving, everyone just like looks at you weirdly. So how do you deal with that?
I think you need to distance yourself at some point. We still have that kind of family feeling in the video game industry where everyone has to be friends with every other colleague. That is cool, but is not sane, I think, in the long term. The first time you say no is very, very hard because you kind of feel like you're letting down people that you're attached to for a project that you care about. And there is a tendency, not only from your superiors, but from the people you work with, to judge you when you're saying no and when you're putting up these barriers. But actually, the more you do it and the more you see the positive consequences it has on you, the more you can accept to do that yourself. You will continue to be judged. There is no limit to that. There is always someone to judge you. But as long as you do not judge yourself, it's going to be all right.
Oh yeah, that's a good thing to say.
It's really true. Sorry, Jason. Well, sorry, Emma. This is just going to keep happening.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, in the freelance world, you always feel like there's someone just at the door. There's someone right behind you, just waiting for you to slip up once, so that they can slide in and steal your job. It's especially true. I don't know about especially true, but it feels very true in the freelance journalism world, because there are people who are willing to work for free, or they just need their shot to be able to steal your spot and take over. But ultimately, in my experience, people fail. People make mistakes, and most editors, most bosses are aware of that. And they're not just going to go, well, you screwed up once, see ya, and then you tell the next person in the line. You can afford to be a little bit honest with yourself and with your employers, and just say, I can't do this one this week, or I can't get this done on time, but I can do it by this time, and here are my reasons. You can be open about that, and it's very important to be.
Actually, sorry, I'm cutting you again. Just something that I'd like to add, and I think Jason covered that up pretty well, is that when you allow yourself that time, it's not going to put everything on fire. Sometimes you feel like if you just about one weekend or 1 week, I don't know, and you'll come back and everything will be in shambles and it will destroy the whole project. It won't. It actually won't. It won't matter. And it's kind of hard for your ego to actually realize that and accept that.
Yeah, you're not that important as you think for the project. Emma?
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to go to the back. To the point where in the games industry is very passion driven, and I've heard it quoted before of that, where we do what we love because it's passion. Well, it's not just that. You can't survive on passion and dedication alone. I think we've put a lot of equity in those particular attitudes, where we've been like, if you work hard, if you push yourself, and this leads into a bigger conversation which has been had on other platforms, but we have put a lot of stock in self-crunch in a lot of ways, and not being particularly kind to ourselves, but also within disciplines and groups whether that be like a small indie studio or maybe slightly bigger and stuff like that. I think we've proliferated that culture a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and some companies can take advantage of that and like use that to have a very high, what's the word? Like when they hire more people like very frequently and they just like go from one internship to another high roller. Which is something that, I mean, we've been talking a little bit about that before, but that's something that you can face if all of the employees get together and, I don't know, form some sort of group that would somehow be useful to fight against the interests of the company. If you catch my drift. Unions, it's unions. Yeah, so if that, how do we does anyone else have like stories they're willing to share about that sort of kind of unhealthy and potentially toxic work environment where you're kind of driven to achieve more and more and to prove yourself more and more to the detriment of your own health? I don't know if
good thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can go back to that, but there's another thing that another kind of theme that is related to success, and that's not necessarily just the things that you produce, but more the way that you are seen and that you want to be seen by others, and like we might call it fame or recognition or respect within your community, that sort of thing. And that's also something that I think people get into this industry like starry-eyed with lots of big dreams and they think they're gonna suddenly achieve some sort of social status, and that can lead to very unhealthy practices. So does anyone want to kind of talk about that?
Yeah, there's an issue that we have with the way that we present ourselves online, and there's been a lot of discourse around the idea of we only present our best selves on Facebook, and we only show the times with our families where all the kids are being well behaved, and not all the other times, which is most of them, where they're not. And we don't show, when we take a photo of ourselves in our house, we take a photo where the mess isn't behind us. Mess is all everywhere else, but it's just not in the frame of the photo. And I think the same is true for the way we present ourselves online professionally. I'm running a company now for the first time. That's not easy, but I feel like I need to be very buoyant in the way that I present the company image and therefore myself. I don't feel like I can safely talk about the challenges that are involved in doing it, that so many small business owners go through, because the brand of my company is inherently tied up in how I'm dealing with it. And so I just have to put up and shut up in a lot of ways. No one's telling me to do that. I don't have a boss telling me to do that, except the little voice in the back of my head that says, if anyone sees you as vulnerable, they're not going to sign you as a professional.
Yeah.
I think it's especially true for freelancers because what you're talking about is a matter of branding yourself. And when you work as a freelancer, your brand is not a company, it's yourself. You represent your brand. And you have to manage that brand, and you cannot allow it to fail in the communication you do around it. And it's pretty hard because the challenge that you meet might not resonate with like your personal circles, your friends and families, and it would resonate with professionals, but you cannot share because it will jeopardize your brand. So there's a kind of vicious cycle there where you need help, but you cannot ask for it because of that branding that you do on yourself.
Yeah, and as a freelancer, you are also representing the clients that you work for as well in a large way, and so you can't make a veiled complaint about a work challenge that you're having without potentially threatening and damaging the brand of the clients that you're working with. And so again, you just have to deal with it all by yourself. Although for me, when I was freelancing full time, we had what we love to call the freelancer support group, which was just a handful of freelancer buddies, and we'd all jump on a group chat and just whinge and moan at each other and just kind of offload a whole bunch in a very cathartic way, and it was really good. And we got each other through some pretty hard times, and so you kind of have to take those conversations to a private place to have them. And you know that worked really, really well for me, and I highly recommend it if you can find that.
Do you think it has to be private though? Isn't there? Couldn't we make the argument that we actually need to enable that conversation to be made more public?
Yeah, but who's going to do that first?
Thank you.
There's something. This is actually something I've been trying to, I guess, like experiment with. So, of course, I work for myself, so it's easier for me to like go out there and try this. But I try to be fairly transparent with how I present myself, like on Twitter and such, and that like I'll openly like talk about a problem I'm having and like kind of use that platform to ask for advice also, and like hopefully at the same time educate others about like an issue you can run into when working for yourself, and like maybe they can just like click on the tweet or whatever they click on the post and just like see what people's comments are. And so it's been an interesting thing. Like, for example, a few weeks ago, like I was struggling with project management in general, and just like dealing with correspondence, just like correspondence emails, and just like a lot of the other things that go into running a small business. And so like I've like for a long time I was holding it in. I was just like, okay, I don't know what to do about this, and I would discuss with a few people. But then I was just like, okay, I have this huge network of people, like they've definitely dealt with this before. Maybe I can ask them, maybe I can get advice. And like it ended up just being really great. Like like so many people reached out and just told me their approaches, and also told me like what options were when it comes to like hiring people and what to look for. And so I think that encouraging a culture that shares more and gives more advice, and that lets you learn from these mistakes and things like that, I think that that's a good thing. And I think that's something that we should try to go for.
Yeah, basically makes that vulnerability and sincerity kind of a part of your brand in a sense.
Yeah, that's my attempt anyways. I don't know how it comes across, but but like it's an experiment.
Yeah.
I think that's really admirable. I think it's also very brave, and it's super hard. And like I like to think that I can be honest online, but I've definitely self-censored, and I'm sure I'll continue to do it, because you're always just so afraid of that. What if in the back of your mind? And I don't know how to break that cycle without people such as yourself, being more vulnerable, as to be good examples.
It's not the first thing that comes to mind. Like it's not an like super obvious thing. You're not just like, oh yeah, I'll just like go and like just like put this out there, because like it's a thing of like you don't know who's watching like you don't know who's looking, who's really paying attention, and you don't know like how people who could potentially hire you are going to take it. But yeah, I guess I try to take the plunge because I'm working for myself, and I really value trying to create that culture, I guess, over like potential hires, I guess, because I just really believe in like just having that sort of advice readily available.
Yeah. Bri, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that. Has life been for you as a freelancer as well?
Well, right now I'm not freelancing, but when I did for a bit, and for me it was always a struggle, because online I don't mention, like, I work professionally in marketing, but I don't mention any of that online, because I feel like I'm trying to be an artist, and I don't want to like bring up the evil world of marketing in a sense.
It's not that bad.
It's really not. It's just, you know, there are some times where like I'd be doing like paid advertisement kind of stuff, and I don't want to put that on this particular channel. And so I came to a point where if I went to pursue freelancing more, I could either choose to somehow incorporate it into this brand that I have now, or I could have another form of myself, and I just didn't want to deal with all of that. I didn't want that. So I've made it work by now working for different companies as opposed to freelancing.
Let's see. I feel like, yeah, this is all about managing, in a sense, the way that you're perceived, right? And the problem is everyone does that on their own, so that this is going to sound weird, but like hiding their true nature in a sense. And you only get, because you only get to see the best parts of others, you see people like who are just going to say, I don't know, oh, I've been chosen as a 30 under 30 for 5 years in a row, and they're not necessarily going to mention that they had to go through various struggles. And you only see the good part, and that makes you feel like you also have to only present the best aspects of your personality and hide everything else. But you know they exist. You know that the bad stuff exists. So you have this weird, imposter syndrome that kind of sets in when you compare yourself to your perception of others.
I just want to riff off that in this particular day and age, and social media being very pertinent in society, but also to my discipline. I totally agree with everything that everyone said, but also I find, particularly as an indie or a freelancer and some of the smaller communities within the industry, your visibility is your acknowledgement and it is your validation. That's how you are acknowledged by your peers and your colleagues. So of course that you want to present yourself in a certain way, you curate your life. However, you know, we're trying to promote an attitude of openness and transparency and empathy and all that. However, we are holding ourselves back in a lot of ways. There's no easy way to go about this. And I think this is reflective of society as a whole, especially on social media. Look at curated Instagrams, et cetera, et cetera. Everything that we do, I find, has become very strategic. So, yeah. To be validated as a professional, you kind of need to stay relevant, and to which staying relevant is sometimes quite hard. It's like, oh, I have to post on a cadence, or I need to, oh, maybe I should add my comment to this particular hot topic that's going through. It's like, in some ways, you're sort of forcing yourself to be part of conversations as well in order to stay relevant.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. The number of times I've caught myself wasting time on Twitter and going, no, this is work. This is me representing myself. This is me working on my brand. I'm not a branding person. Like, I don't know whether that actually has any value at all, but I do need to. Yeah, you're right, Emma. I think that's a really important point. I hadn't thought about that before. You feel the need to put your voice into a conversation so that you can be seen being a part of that conversation. And that's how you stay relevant to your current list of followers, but also potentially be visible to people in that conversation who you would quite like to maybe notice you
and that can get pretty stressful. And I've seen friends who have waded into conversations where it has been a very healthy debate, but it is quite stressful in terms of the emotional labor into putting forward opinions as well as thoughts and keeping that going. But the impressions are good. So it's weighing that up. But I do see that as not an overt force, but they perhaps a contributing factor of, hey, we have to put ourselves out there. We have to be seen. Your impressions and your followers count when you're looking at metrics. And for example, depending how you go about your social media presence.
Actually, it totally rings a bell because at the very start of my career, I had no skill that I knew to put forward. I didn't know how to brand myself or how to choose things I wanted to talk about or to work on. So I focused my Twitter shares and following and all social networks on crowdfunding, especially Kickstarter, and it landed me jobs specifically in that area, which I liked but was not my utmost passion, so to say. And it was only when I stopped focusing myself on this extra load of work on social medias and that I started to write about what I cared about, narrative design and writing in general, that I started to grow a brand that was more honest with myself and the things I wanted to work on. And actually, the shift was very, very fast. I didn't gain more followers or whatever, but I gained much more meaningful conversations with professionals that saw I had something to say and something that I actually cared about. I was not following trends. I was not just jumping on the bandwagon or a successful project or something. I was talking about the things that intimately talked to me.
I agree with that, and I think you're totally right. But on the other hand, I've been posting a lot of memes, and I haven't gotten any job offers about that. So it's like, where are they? But yeah, I remember that discussion. Made me remember a few years ago when I had a discussion with a friend, and I was like, no, I don't care about the engagement. I don't really care about how people, see me online or whatever. I think I'm being sincere and I just post whatever. And my friend was like, oh, well, that's great. Then I assume you could like just delete your account right away and start a new one. It doesn't matter to you. Like, actually. So yeah, it does kind of, even if it's at a subconscious level, it does kind of matter the way you present yourself.
And it does matter. Like let's be serious for a second. Like we've talked about this in terms of it being, we feel a bit paranoid about how we present ourselves online. Maybe we shouldn't care about it as much, but it is actually pretty important. Like when you're a freelancer, people will go and look at your Twitter account to get a feel for you before they pick you up. Like that is something that does happen. So let's not discount the importance of that stuff. I think it's really, it's easy to identify the flaws that this system has, but it is also an extremely valuable tool. There are people that I have definitely counted mentors of mine who I wouldn't have had a relationship with if it wasn't for Twitter and other social media platforms, but Twitter in a really big way. And there have been times when I've been confused or not sure what direction to take with a sentence or with a paragraph, and I can put that out there, and people have been able to come to my rescue. So it is very important as well to maintain this online presence, as long as we're aware of what the downsides are and have other ways of addressing them,
and aware of how other people are using that same filter.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Does anyone want to add anything to that particular topic? Otherwise, I'm just gonna move on to the next thing, and we're on time, so this is pretty good. Yeah. So one other way, it's kind of related, but another way that we don't necessarily pay attention to when we're trying to kind of achieve that mythical success, that vague concept, is we think that we have to produce content. We think that we have to be always ahead, and that causes us to dismiss things that are actually arguably the most important things in one's life, in a sense. So things such as taking time just to develop other passions and like get interests that are not necessarily directly related to your professional field, and also building strong support networks and just hanging out with friends. and being in an environment where you just enjoy living, not only for the things that you are producing. So how has that manifested for you?
Yeah, sometimes you see headlines that are just like look at this amazing game made by just like one guy, and like oftentimes
we have a cameo. Hello.
Sorry, Nori's just like really in my business right now. But of things, and you'll just be you'll think to yourself like, oh, I have to work harder because this huge game is being made by like one guy, and he's doing everything. He's doing the art, he's doing the programming, he's doing all this, and so like it kind of instills this weird like notion that you have to just like work harder, thus work longer, and just like crunch to like create this thing that's like way like that may or may not be out of scope for you, because like we kind of fantasize this like, oh yeah, I just made the next Minecraft, like I did it all myself and stuff like that, and like I don't think that I think that we should really just like know what we're capable of, and just like also like pace ourselves when it comes to just like our abilities and just like how we apply them.
Yeah.
We have a kind of dichotomy between notion of markers, of progression markers in your career and in the work you produce. You have a tendency to start a project and to consider that an achievement or a marker for progress is at the end of the project. And you project yourself on that ending instead of looking back to what you did before and taking in the mistakes, taking in the failures you had before, and knowing how you can improve on them. We have like this mentality of always looking forward to the future and trying to reach an ideal that is not humanly possible, because of course one-man projects exist. They are there, and it's amazing all the work that is done to make them possible. But you do not have to weight yourself against those standards. This is not healthy to do that. And it kind of resonates strongly with me because I had a huge burnout like years ago for a project that I was really, really attached to. I was working on weekends. I was doing overtime like every night. And it began with small things like the E3 is coming up. We have to put in a little bit more of work. The GDC is coming up. We should do a little bit more and a little bit more. And it just escalates. And at one point, it was my family that told me, hey, we haven't seen you in like 6 months. Like, are you alive? And I think it was so dramatic for me to just realize that I had completely lost touch with reality, with what made my reality, and everything in my life was my job. And and I just completely broke down and was not able physically to go to work. I would throw up and everything. And it was really nice to have people to care about me, and also to take the workload of thinking out the problem for me, that I didn't have to do that exercise myself, because I didn't have the mental strength to do it. So my friends did it for me, my family did it for me. And it was really, really helpful to just be, instead of pulling myself backwards, to have people pull myself instead.
Yeah, because as soon as you get into that spiral of setting goals for yourself that are completely unreasonable, obviously you can't reach those goals, so you get into, you feel guilty about it, and that kind of spirals into worse and worse mood and health. So it's really important to kind of be aware of that and don't let yourself fall into the trap.
And it's important to know where your support networks are. Sybil just referred to her friends and family helping her through that process. I mentioned before a group of other kind of professionals in the field that I could go to and say, I'm feeling this way. Surely I'm not the only person to ever experience this. Can anyone else kind of talk me down? And yeah, you need to be able to identify those support networks and be willing to use them. Be willing to reach out to them and be vulnerable to them if you can't be vulnerable publicly. Because if you're not vulnerable to anyone, then that's when you start kind of really hurting yourself, I think.
I think even more than because we're talking about support networks, and that kind of implies that there are people that are here to help you out deal with the amount of work that you have. That's kind of a very broad generalization, but it's in the name, right? Support networks. But so I've seen a lot of people, a lot of students who go into class and go through their program, their school, and they think they will become, the next, I don't know, the next notch before the current notch appeared. But like the next, I don't know, Jonathan Blow or Phil Fish or other superstar indie developer. And it's like, and they believe maybe some of them are going to watch this panel right here, right now, and are going to be like, oh, I kind of agree with all of that, but it doesn't apply to me because I'm not like others. Like I'm above that sort of stuff, and I know that I need to prove to the world that I'm also a genius. And I think what's really important for us to emphasize during this panel is that it doesn't matter. Like, maybe you're a genius, maybe you're not, but it really doesn't matter. I don't feel that has brought any kind of happiness or sense of satisfaction to anyone before. You have to, the priority in one's life is, at least for me, it's to find a situation where I'm okay with the work I'm doing. Like I enjoy the work I do, but the most important thing is to have a good life balance, to have friends, to be in an environment where I just enjoy getting up in the morning and when I take time out, I'm gonna have some good free time and hang out with people, go watch a movie or whatever. And I feel like that's the definition of success that you can aim for, right? Putting yourself in a position where you can just enjoy living instead of creating this image of yourself, right?
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, TJ.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you. I think the indie scene needs to idealize comfort a bit more. I think we need to just be like, just say it's okay to just be comfortable while you're doing your work. And for a long time, like I've also had this issue, like when becoming self-employed, like I had to often justify like stepping away from work for any amount of time and like actually enjoying life. Like I really had to like have an internal debate with myself. I was just like, okay, did I really get enough work done to justify like going on this trip or hanging out with these people for this amount of time? And like it really sucks that that's something I had to do, because like while working at a regular job with regular hours, like sure I had like a set shift, and like when I was off that shift I could do whatever I want, but now when I'm my own boss, I really have to just like manage that myself and manage like how much free time I give myself. And yeah, it sometimes can be hard to just be like, hey, it's okay to take a break. I don't have to just keep crunching at this forever, because it always feels like you can be doing more. But yeah, when you think about it, like it's a lot more cost effective to treat yourself well, because you'll be more equipped to get things done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, in larger companies, we're starting to see that mindset, of looking after mental health, physical health. A lot of people who work in these larger companies have children, have partners, have families. And I've seen in the past recent years, both in the game sector and also in my previous sector that I was in, that we're starting to see more encouragement of that. Now, being part of a larger organization, you know, there's a lot of regimented steps and all that. It's like, do we hit this particular date for this deadline, submission, etc., etc. So everything that TJ's mentioned there rings true, not just for indies, but also in my own experience, what I've seen of larger organizations too. But I'm glad, and I think we can do more work on it, but I'm glad to see that we are putting more attention on the individual holistically. It's not just your professional person that we need to worry about. Like, are you hitting your KPIs? No, it's, are you happy?
Yeah.
Are you sane? Are you, you know, you are inherently less productive if you are depressed, for example. That's just using an example. But yeah, I think that's a culture that we should keep striving to make more mainstream. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Bree, did you add anything?
Yeah. So I think it's important to kind of self-evaluate yourself and ask yourself why you're pushing for something a lot of the times. So often you'll have a goal and you might have many goals. I always tend to overdo my goals, and then I have to step back and say, why am I setting these? And if it's not to push the work in the direction that I want it to go, if it's for like this sort of branding or fame, like I don't have to worry about my work, and necessarily I have my own job. So is doing this going to make me happier at the end of the day? Is spending my free time on this making my life better? Is a question that I constantly have to go back and forth with. And being able to say, you know what, if this takes forever to come out or finish, that's okay, because I'd much rather go take my dog for a walk or go meet up with friends for coffee. Having that moment of evaluation is really important. And like I recommend like writing a journal every morning, because that's what's helped me realize, hey, I'm pursuing this thing for the wrong reason, and I shouldn't keep pushing myself to my limit, and I should cut it out.
Yeah, that's really good. I totally agree. And actually, this kind of is a good lead into the next point, which is what are specific solutions and the practical things that we can aim to kind of put into place in order to find ways to address everything that we've mentioned before. So writing a journal is a good one, I think. I'm saying this, but I don't have one, but I'm going to start one now. What else? We mentioned support networks, I think. And it's really good to recognize those and make sure that they stay strong people that you can be vulnerable with, and that you can confidently share, and that can have your back when you need it. I don't know. Does anyone else have other tips?
It's a bit of an obvious one, but to just disconnect yourself from the internet is actually a really good thing to do. It's something that's been said over and over again, but when you work in the video game industry or in the entertainment industry, it's really hard to do. Because you will always have that 4G on your smartphone with Slack notifications popping all over your screen. And it's really hard to take that step back. But it's really helpful to do that, to allow you time out. Actually, it's simple tools that you need to give yourself to maximize the happiness you can get outside of your work. And cutting yourself from the internet or just from social networks from time to time, not every time you get off work, is actually really nice, and it's surprisingly nice.
Yeah, and I think it's important to be kind of aggressive about that. Like, Slack. So for me, Slack is a wonderful tool that also controls a large portion of my life, and like nearly every one of my clients uses it. And so now I have this delightful collection of Slacks that can be great, but also incredibly taxing. And it can get to the point where you see that notification go off, or you hear the sound that Slack makes when you get a private message, and you kind of flinch because you know something bad it could be about to happen, something quite stressful could be about to happen, and you don't want that just before you go to sleep. You don't want that when you're finally sitting down to dinner with your family. You don't want that, you know, outside of work hours, ideally. And so learning how those notifications work and using the snooze feature, or if it's Twitter that's killing you or email that's killing you, get those off your phone and deal with them specifically on your computer when you go to get it. Don't let it control you. You decide when you make it part of your life, and at what times of day that you allow yourself to think about those things. There's been way too many times in my life where I've seen an email notification go off and go, I'm curious enough to check this right now before I go to bed, and then not be able to get any sleep for the rest of the night. And it's really unhealthy to do it. Yeah. So learning how those notification systems work and choosing to censor yourself away from them so that you can protect your downtime is incredibly necessary. The smartphones are great, but they can be really dangerous as well.
Just to round on that, I think that's a really good point, to create spaces for specific uses. I have a computer that is my personal computer. There's nothing professional on it. And I have another computer, like a laptop, that is only for professional stuff. My smartphone is a bit of both, but I always get all notifications at the same hour every day. And these rules that are very strict allow me to kind of make these little boxes where every space has a specific use, and it really helps you to kind of control all these disruptive inputs in your life.
There's another thing you mentioned earlier, I mean, not during the panel, Jason, and that was mentoring and feedback. So how does mentoring kind of enter into that subject? What's your experience with it?
Mentors can be hard to find, but they're incredibly valuable. And also they're often a lot more willing than people tend to give. Like, people tend to assume that asking for a mentor is a really big thing to ask for. But just ask for small things. So like in my experience as a freelancer, there are a huge number of people out there who are willing to read an article you've written or give you some feedback on a pitch before you send it. It doesn't actually cost them that much time, and they quite like to do it. It's a little bit of a tap on their ego. They get to feel a little bit good about using their professionalism to benefit someone else and to look good to this little person who wants to come up in the industry. There's often quite a bit of willingness there. So just ask. The worst thing that can happen is they can say no, or not now, or refer you to someone else. Like, if you don't ask, it'll never happen. And on the feedback side, feedback's really scary. It's really scary, but in any creative field, it's an absolutely necessary part of your professional life. And so you need to learn to, and it's a much easier thing to say than do. You need to learn to rationalize it in a way that makes sense. So I had this situation where an article I wrote that I was really excited to publish ended up getting sent to 3 different editors for feedback. And they all had different harsh things to say about it. And it really hurt. And I ended up losing a couple of days of time to not feeling any confidence in myself whatsoever. And so that led me to find some people who I could ask for feedback from, who I trusted to be honest with me and give me the negative feedback I needed, but who also understood the importance of giving accurate, tailored, positive feedback. So not the old feedback sandwich, but true. They could truly say, here's an article you wrote. These are the things I really liked about it and why. That's the most important thing, why I liked it, so that you can learn to work towards your strengths. And also, if you just make these grammatical changes, it's going to make it much easier to read. And suddenly that took all the fear away. So if you can establish that relationship by saying, can you give me feedback on this article? Tell me what you like about it and tell me the things I need you to fix, and don't worry about X, Y, or Z, then the feedback they give back to you is categorized that way, and it's going to be much more easy to consume.
And I also, I encourage everyone to have some way for others to provide feedback anonymously online. That can be very intimidating, and that can be, it's actually not for everyone, because maybe you're not in the right spot mentally to kind of receive that sort of anonymous feedback, and you need to have some sort of some kind of privilege to be able to just open a form, an anonymous form, without just receiving endless harassment. But if you are able to do that, this is something that I've done that has proven really useful and insightful. Just having a place that you publish online and that you let others know about, and that just like where people can tell you, oh, you've done something and that wasn't great, and you can just improve on that. There's another thing that I wanted to mention that's really important before we end this, and we mentioned it very early on during the panel, and that's unions, which are, I think there's a discussion that's starting to happen around them, and they're really important in kind of making sure that the needs of people, the life balance stuff is like it helps, and also it helps with the support networks. Like if you have a union that you can join, and then you can talk about stuff from your work with people, that can be tremendously helpful. In the US and also in Canada, actually, people can look up the Twitter account Game Workers Unite. In France, there's the Syndicat des Travailleurs du Jeu Vidéo, STJV. I don't know if there's anything in Australia yet, but yeah, it's really worth thinking about and considering and like informing yourself about, I think.
There's an excellent panel on exactly this subject happening at Freeplay on Saturday. I'm saying slowly as I load the form to tell you. I'll get back to you with the actual details. A very excellent person called Tim Colwell, who cares deeply about this subject, is going to be speaking on that at Freeplay. And I had him on my podcast a while ago, and it was a spicy podcast. I really enjoyed that episode because he got very honest, and that's Tim. It was wonderful.
Excellent. Right. So I think we're gonna kind of start wrapping this up, and maybe we'll have a couple of minutes to take questions if there are any. But yeah, I mean, we've talked about a lot of things. We've given solutions. I think importantly, it's really crucial to get yourself out of the mentality that your work defines you, and that if you don't achieve enough, if you don't produce enough, if you don't create something that is going to be successful, then you're not worth anything. That's kind of a very toxic and unhealthy mentality to be in. So you need to get yourself out of that. If you think that way right now, just be aware that this is not how people are gonna see you. Like, people are not gonna see you through the lens of your work. They're gonna see you through the lens of who you are and how, and if you're a good and nice person to be around. That's way more important. So really, that sort of thing does not matter at all, and it's not a race, right? You can take your time, you can take years, you can like take time for yourself, find what makes you happy, and go for that. You don't need to have made a game that sold, I don't know, 70 billion copies by the age of 25. That's not a thing. It's stop worrying about that. And yeah, find what makes you happy and strive for that. I think that is going to be it. I think there are no questions. If you have questions on Twitter, the hashtag is Freeplay18, hashtag Freeplay18. Feel free to ask them, because then we're going to wrap up the panel. We're going to wait a little bit of time before we actually end this, just in case. I'm just having a look at Twitter, but I think.
In the meantime, if I can add something
yeah, sure.
On what you said, above the criteria of being a successful you, I think it's important professionally to give yourself little progression milestones, but like small things, very, very small things. Landing a client, finishing a project, finishing another one. Sales and reach are good for companies. They're not good for you personally. And it's something that is very important for people to give themselves goals that they know they will be able to attain. Not just challenges. Challenges are good, and challenges will make you fail. And failing is very nice because it teaches you things. And we have that mentality that you do not have the right to fail when actually you need to do that. And it's very important to give yourself opportunities for success, to tell yourself, I will do this very little thing that I absolutely 100% I'm sure I will be able to do. And it's a very small thing. It's not something that you need to communicate about with other professionals, but for yourself, it's very important because you have that feeling that you progressed.
All right. Well, I think we're gonna wrap this up. This was a good way to good conclusion to end up on. Thank you, everyone. Again, have a look at the freeplay.net.au website. There are more panels and more conferences and more events, more exciting things happening throughout the week. Thanks for all the wonderful panelists. That was a really interesting and insightful conversation. And thank you to everyone who listened to us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.